So I wanted to welcome everybody. Good afternoon. We're going to get started. So welcome to our kickoff webinar, Meet the Friendly Expert, Financial Roadmap to Wellness. My name is David Knapp. I work in the Elder Justice Unit for the New York City Department for the Aging. For the next hour or so, I will be your master of ceremonies for this event. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and in somewhat good spirits, given what we're all going through. Before we start, I wanted to do a special thank you for you tuning in and giving us your time, especially given all your choices on such a beautiful, warm November day. So thank you. I also wanted to thank PSS for the wonderful job that they've done helping us to host this series. Just to mention, this webinar is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Commissioner of the New York City Department for the Aging, Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, for some pre-recorded opening remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, Commissioner of the New York City Department for the Aging. I'm very excited to welcome you to this new virtual series, Meet the Expert. This series focuses on an important issue, which is your financial health, your financial empowerment, your financial literacy, and also giving you tools to combat financial fraud. Like physical health, financial health is a cornerstone of living a happy, successful, relaxed life. With increased financial wellness, individuals can enjoy retirement and be better prepared for life's unexpected challenges. At the core of financial health is knowledge and empowerment. Many times there are financial issues that older adults in New York face that on the surface seem daunting, like, should I file for bankruptcy? How does a reverse mortgage work? Knowledge encompasses one's life's goals, challenges, and available financial resources are here to help you. Those experiencing financial wellness often experience a greater sense of empowerment, reduce stress, and improve physical health. A house is only as strong as its foundation. Finances underlie each one of our daily lives, and it is important for us to create a space, a safe space, where you can ask experts your most important questions. And that is why we designed the Meet the Expert series. Often people just don't know that these services exist to address their major concerns. This series is meant to replicate an intimate in-person chat. Through these series, you're going to get expert advice on things that are part of our daily lives, choosing the right financial institution, when to seek out a financial advisor, the latest online smart budgeting tool. I'm looking forward to learning about that one. The do's and don'ts of refinancing your home, and online banking security, and the recent COVID-19, those many scams and schemes that have emerged, just to name a few. Our goal is to help you to get to answer your questions and on all of those pressing financial needs. Hopefully, you will get the information that you need, access to an expert, as well as a few new tips on how to use these valuable resources that you're getting. Join us, join the series. I'd like to thank PSS for helping us pilot this new series. Hope to see you at the Meet the Expert series. Enjoy it, and we will test and see how safe and secure you feel after this series. Thank you very much.
Before I introduce our main speaker, I'd like to remind everyone to use the chat to ask any general questions. We have staff monitoring the chat, and we will be answering questions in real time. As a rule, please keep questions brief and general. Our experts will not be giving specific individual legal or financial advice. Although our speaker today is a lawyer, she will not be giving any individual advice. Following today's webinar, we will be sending our resource out resources mentioned in today's presentation, along with a brief survey. I just wanted to remind people that this is a forum to ask questions. So again, keep the questions brief and more general and not specific to your specific situation. And we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to present Ms. Marci Lobel-Esrig, Esquire. Can you move forward? So this is just a little bit about Marci. She's been a practicing attorney for more than 20 years. From 2007 to 2015, Marci was an in-house attorney for a well-known real estate investment company. Marci received her JD from NYU School of Law. She has a BA degree, magna cum laude, from Columbia University, where she was elected to the Phi Beta Kappa. In 2015, Marci launched SilverBills, which allows her to combine the social mission of helping the elderly age with dignity and security with her years of professional expertise. In terms of some fun facts about Marci, Marci speaks fluent Spanish, loves to garden, and is the mother of 3 children. Now, I present you Marci Lobel-Esrig.
Thank you, David, and thank you all of the attendees for joining us today for this webinar. I hope it's informative, and just want to reiterate that a lot of the resources will be available to you and will be sent to you via email. So don't feel like you're going to miss out if you don't take notes or anything and miss something in the presentation. Just by way of background, as David mentioned, I've been an attorney for more than 20 years. Most recently at the New York Mets baseball team parent company, Sterling Equities. And I was there for about 8 years as Associate General Counsel. And shortly after I started, the Bernie Madoff scandal broke and the company lost about $500 million and almost the entire 401k of the company. So I had a very unique window into financial exploitation and learned a lot about even the psychology behind it. How these sophisticated high net worth individuals could be built of, so much of their fortune, as well as the 401k of the company. At the same time, my aunt was aging in her home, and she was really struggling with the process of managing her household bills. And not for lack of funds, but the wherewithal, it just became very complicated for her to manage it. And those complications slowly became insurmountable. I did a lot of research into the overlap of those 2 issues, financial exploitation and bill management. And I realized through my research that elder financial exploitation in this country exceeds $1 billion annually. And that often people are financially exploited when they turn to people for help, financial help, specifically in many cases in the area of bill management. So they'll allow people to come into their homes and help them write checks. And there's no real-time data in check writing, so it's very difficult to police whether unauthorized checks are being written. And it's impossible to police the home for theft of personal effects. So about 5 years ago, I left Sterling to work on SilverBills full-time, and we are proud partners of the New York City Department for the Aging. So with that, I'm going to turn to my slide presentation, and I'll go through my deck. It'll take about 15 minutes or so, and then after that I'll answer some questions. Again, we're going to stay away from specific questions that are individually applicable for a variety of reasons, including you really need a certified or licensed an investment advisor or a personal relationship with an attorney to receive that kind of information. But we're going to be giving you some resources that you can follow up individually. So I am going to do my screen share now, and I hope you can see the screen. So what we're doing here is doing a presentation on a financial roadmap to wellness. And my name and my bio. So the challenges are faced by many older adults, and one of them is because of greater longevity. Now, in years past, decades past, longevity was not so as extensive as it is now, and the traditional pillars of retirement income were in many cases sufficient to support the retirement of previous generations. You can probably think about your own parents or grandparents and their lifespan and how they retired and what their income was like during retirement. I know my own grandfather was a city employee. He ultimately was chairman of the Board of Standards and Appeals. Excuse me. And his pension was sufficient for him and my grandmother to retire. Contrast that with, you know, me and my own family situation, and there is no government pension or company-wide pension. It's just much less common these days. And in addition, you know, my grandfather passed away in his 70s, et cetera. Now life expectancy is so much greater that it's unknown whether that kind of retirement benefit would be sufficient for the increased lifespans that we're all experiencing, and that's a positive thing. So the three-legged retirement, typical retirement tools of Social Security, pension, and savings are available to fewer Americans. These pensions are not, you know, as prevalent as they used to be. Social Security is really not meeting current requirements, particularly in certain parts of the country. And so most older adults have to rely on their own wherewithal to provide much of the funds that are going to be needed to live through their retirement. These can be in the form of, as it says here, 401ks and other forms of income. So this is an outline of how we're going to talk about these challenges and ways to address them as adults experience this increasing longevity, in addition to being able to less frequently access the traditional sources of retirement. So the outline for today is going to be retirement planning and adjustments, money managing and budgeting basics, and scam prevention. And particularly scam prevention, a lot of these topics will be going into more depth at some of the other presentations, and we're going to give you a general overview of all of them. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is retirement planning and adjustments, excuse me. So really important with this particular topic is to assess your own financial situation regularly. So much as you need to typically have a medical checkup on a regular basis, perhaps that's yearly for many people, it's important to assess your own financial situation regularly as well. And unfortunately, I think in our culture, a lot of topics related to finances are considered taboo. There's this like hyper personal stance culturally in the United States towards these topics. And this really works against us when we're talking about retirement planning and, you know, kind of assessing financial stability and income needs. So we're going to try to, you know, discourage that kind of taboo, you know, highly personalized approach to this, and really bring to the forefront a lot of the available tools, as well as discuss in a very forthright way how you can assess your own financial situation regularly. So we're going to provide some really concrete tools that you can use on your own. And again, these will be sent to you later as well after the webinar. So one is the Elder Economic Security Standard Index. And again, I'll get into the details of that momentarily. Gather data on your assets, liabilities, and cash flow, and we'll provide a worksheet for this. And fill out a financial inventory worksheet and weekly spending diary. We'll also provide a template for that. Do a comprehensive financial assessment, which is a tool that's provided by the National Council on Aging, and set monthly and annual goals. So this is the Elder Economic Security Standard Index. This is a tool that's produced by the University of Massachusetts at Boston. It's hyper localized research that empowers this tool. It's regularly updated. It's free, so anyone can do this on their own. This is the website, elderindex.org. Again, you will receive this in an email, so you don't need to take notes now if you don't want to. And basically, what you're going to do here is two simple steps. The first in this box you choose your county and state, because we know that financial issues vary greatly by geography. And so why this is so valuable is the Elder Economic Security Standard Index is hyper-local data to the point of county level. So it's very valuable because we know that New York City is a very expensive place to live and to retire. And so this data is going to be really personalized to your locale. And it's really, really a great insight into your particular geography. The other thing you're going to choose here is your filters for household, whether you're single or couple, your status, in terms of housing, whether you rent or you own, whether you have a mortgage or not, and your health status. And then you simply answer those questions. And the Elder Index, this is just a sample of some random data that was put in here. The Elder Index will provide a hyper-localized number for what you will need to retire comfortably. Okay, and then we'll give you budgeting guidelines as well for what these expenses will be in your location. So again, for transportation, the New York City area is very different than other parts of the country. And that's why this tool is so valuable, because it's based on hyper-local data and it gives you really good guidelines for what that will be. And I just think it's a free tool. It's sponsored by some financial institutions that pay for the research that goes into this. I know the researchers actually who produce it, and it's a good step to, to begin the process of assessing your financial needs. So that's one tool that you can use in a personal way to come up with some really good data. Another thing you can do is to fill out a financial inventory worksheet. So this document, and we'll provide this to you, is one place where all of the information is contained, and it's just valuable to have that in one document. If you want, and you have professionals who you work with, like an attorney or an accountant, you can share that with them. If you have adult children or other relatives, this is just a way to centralize all of the critical information that you will need to retire and to assess your financial background. So this is what we provide our clients, our SilverBills clients, our private clients in general. And so I would highly recommend that you take a look at this and fill it out. It provides a section for, your banking information, whether you have checking, savings, CDs, etc., the contact and company information, a whole section for your investment information. And this is basically contact information. So it's not from a financial perspective, but it's just a good idea to maintain this data in one place. Your insurance policies, whether or not you have those, and your housing status, in terms of whether you have a mortgage, etc., any other loans you might have. And then the team who works with you, the professional team, and any other agreements, where they're located, if they're in existence, your estate documents, powers of attorney, etc. So this is just, as you're going through this process of doing a financial assessment, it's just a good way to get started and to have a central location for storing this information. Another tool that you can use when you're doing this financial assessment is provided by the National Council on Aging. And unlike the Elder Security Index, this is a much more intensive list of questions. So there are 23 questions. They're not complicated, but there's a lot more information that you will have to input in here. And it's also available for free at economiccheckup.org. And you will answer these questions, and you will get a personal report with tips on money management, budgeting, staying healthy, and protecting your financial information. So again, this is another completely free tool that's produced by a not-for-profit, the National Council on Aging. And once you finish these 23 questions, and again, it's not information that's difficult to accumulate, it's just more in depth, you will get a personalized, very valuable set of information regarding your financial assessment. So I recommend this as well. And again, this link will also be sent to you after the webinar, and you can use it when you want. And again, like I said at the beginning, these are not static exercises. So, put on your calendar maybe quarterly or biannually to do these kinds of assessments to get a sense of how the numbers are moving. In terms of the economic index, the first tool that I mentioned, those numbers will change, right? The transportation costs, health costs, those types of budgeting requirements are affected by factors that are outside of all of our control. And so it's important to keep on track of that and do it periodically to see how those things changes and how you can adjust your budgeting accordingly. So the next broad topic we're going to talk about is our good money management habits. And those include reconciling your bank statements monthly, using a spending diary, keeping receipts, and setting aside savings monthly, planning for predictable future expenses. So reconciling your bank statements monthly, we talk about this often. It's important to see, particularly if you're writing checks, which may take some time to clear. It's important to see how your cash flow is progressing monthly and to keep track of it, to make notes of where your money is spending. And this goes along with number 2, which is a spending diary. Many of us really do not follow budgeting guidelines. We don't know what we're spending money on. Again, I believe this is a cultural issue. We're not taught basic money, fiscal responsibility skills in general in most schools in our country, and culturally it's often a taboo topic. If we were having an in-person conversation, I might say, how many of you was it ever discussed in your own families by your parents, money, budgeting, anything like that? It's an interesting, I think, challenge that Americans face, that we have this kind of secrecy around money. So using a spending diary is really an important vehicle for seeing what you're spending your money on, and it's really critical. And it also aligns with the tools that I talked about earlier, including the economic index. So you can see if you're meeting those targets for your local area. Are you spending more on food, eating out, restaurants, etc., than are the benchmarks for your local area, or less, which would be great. If you use a spending diary, you can see that, and it's important. And there are all kinds of free tools, again, online for this spending diary. There's no particular form that you have to use. You can use your own little notebook, etc. But some people who are savvy with the computer and use something like QuickBooks or Quicken, this can be done really in a very sophisticated way through technology, but it's not necessary. If you have a fairly, straightforward spending pattern, you can do it with a notebook. So you're not precluded because of your lack of familiarity with tech tools, or, basically your disinclination to use the computer for any of this. You can just use a document, a piece of paper. And the next item is keeping receipts. So this is important just in terms of financial exploitation. Receipts are a way to validate actual charges, as you may know, and also they're important for tax purposes for particular kinds of expenditures. As you may know, if you're ever audited, you do have to provide backup documentation in some cases for certain IRS-related deductions, etc. So it's a good idea to keep receipts. And this does not have to be done with paper. I mean, I have a whole other webinar that I do on the hazards of paper and how paper can lead to financial exploitation. So I'm not recommending, keeping all of this information in paper form. It can be scanned, etc., and kept in a secure cloud-based storage system. That's not the topic of today's talk, but maybe if there's interest, we could do that talk another time. But in any event, whatever form you're using, keeping receipts is important. Number 4 is set aside savings monthly. We did get a question in advance of the webinar about this, and I'll go into more detail when we get to the question period. But you know, this is a great goal to have. There are a lot of reasons that there should be a monthly set aside of savings, even during retirement, because there are always unforeseen circumstances that are requiring liquid assets to you know, to cover. And so it's recommended that a percentage of your income or savings, whatever it is, your pension, your 401k distributions, be set aside monthly in a savings vehicle. And finally, plan for predictable future expenses. So, you know, these could be anything from an annual vacation to, you know, knowing that a particular medical issue is planned that's, you know, elective and will require some expenditures. There's a way of planning, and that can be done through budgeting annually for predictable future expenses. Again, I'm not going to really speak to the specifics of anyone's, you know, personal you know, experience, but everyone has predictable future expenses that we know. If we own a home, for example, we know there are particular guidelines for when a roof should be replaced or windows, etc. That's one example of a predictable future expense. So these should be planned for instead of, you know, a calamity arising and not having any funds to cover them. Just to mention in the context of this particular topic, what we do at SilverBills, we have a software solution for receiving, scrutinizing, storing, and paying our clients' bills. And clients no longer need to open bills or write checks or remember deadlines. Each of our clients has an account manager who works directly with that client and who is reachable via phone, email, text, or even fax. And typically, clients pay a flat monthly fee. However, we do have a program with the New York City Department for the Aging, whereby certain clients within New York City can possibly receive our services for free. So David is the head of that program, and I'm sure he'll share his information with you. And our website is silverbills.com. As I mentioned, we have an account manager, so we have a personal professional who's on your team with respect to a lot of these expense items, and that's what we focus on, the expenses, making sure expenses are paid correctly and on time. So the third component in this overall picture of financial wellness is preventing scams. I know there'll be some experts who are specifically speaking about scams. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, when I first learned about this problem, I mean, I guess I always knew tangentially that there were scams and elder financial exploitation in this country, but when I really started delving into it, I was really appalled at the numbers. And it doesn't really only affect elders, obviously. I mean, these scams are affecting all demographics in our country and others, but particularly scam artists and thieves are preying on older adults. They may view them as more vulnerable. So there are ways that you can protect yourself because this annual figure of more than $1 billion annually is horrifying to me, and everyone has to work together to try to combat this. So there are some things you can do to prevent scams. So one thing is, unfortunately, as I learned from the Bernie Madoff experience, where the people in my company were close affiliates of his, you are at risk from people that you know well as people who you don't know. So unfortunately, what I often say in the business context is it's hazardous to predicate a business solely on trust. And unfortunately, when you're trusting individuals, even if you have relationships or long-term relationships with them, there is always the potential to be scammed, and that's a sad reality that I think we all are dealing with today. So be on alert, even for scams that are going to be perpetrated by people who are close to you. We all kind of know about the strangers. For example, the phone calls. You know, I'm on an Elder Abuse Coalition, Prevention Coalition, and almost every month we talk about these phone calls, particularly preying on seniors. We had a client, for example, who got a message on her machine. She did not answer the phone because we highly advise our clients not to answer the phone unless they know the person calling, and most people have caller ID now and can identify them. And the message said, "This is Con Edison. You didn't pay your bill. You need to use Western Union or another form of immediate transfer of the funds, or we're going to terminate your electric coverage in the next 2 days." So rather than doing that, she contacted us, and we were able to quickly verify that that was a scam. It was being perpetrated throughout the area, and she was able to stop that scam from violating her and her funds and losing her funds. So one way to be wary is to just be careful of the phone call from the IRS, the grandparent scam, which there's a whole presentation about. I'm not sure if there's going to be one on this seminar. Yes, David's nodding yes, the grandparent scam. So Gary Brown works tirelessly to try to help prevent a lot of these scams. But people call in the middle of the night pretending to be your grandchildren. Just be very careful of the phone and the strangers.
Marci, just to let everyone know, on the 17th, Gary Brown, who's from the Attorney General's office, will be giving a presentation on COVID scams and schemes. So just keep that in mind, because Marci's bringing up a lot of points that he will go into more detail using illustrations.
The second point on preventing scams are shredding. Shredding is really critical. There's a lot of garbage theft that's going on. There's even mail theft, and criminals will steal garbage to try to obtain personal identifying information as well as mail. So it's really important to shred documents that contain personal identifying information rather than just discarding it in its entirety. And a shredder can be obtained from any kind of local company, or Amazon Prime can deliver a shredder to you. If you must, you can also just rip it up. So that's always the low-tech approach. Use a password protection interface. We really highly recommend this. We've had clients who have started working with us and they have their passwords written down on a piece of paper. I don't think I have to explain in detail why this is a problem. But it is. I mean, if you lose even if it's in your wallet and your wallet's stolen and all of your passwords are there, it's just a bad idea. I'm not going to advocate a particular device or password protection program. There are a lot of them on the market. There are some that are free, others that are paid. We just would really, really recommend that you use a password protection interface. Never give your credit card or banking information over the phone unless you initiated the call, or the person, if it's your attorney or your accountant, for example, your adult child. But in most cases, it's just ill-advised. Employ healthy skepticism and try not to answer the phone when the number is unknown. I can't stress this enough. I think it's a generational issue, to be quite honest, that when the phone rings, I know with my own parents, they always run to answer the phone. I think it's something we have to work against our impulse to do this, because the phone is often a portal to identity theft and financial exploitation. So please try to be vigilant and use healthy skepticism when answering the phone. And then finally, you can use a service that protects against scams and identity theft, like a service like EverSafe. There are others. This is a tech tool, and there are many of them that can really, in a very robust way, employing technology, help protect you from being victimized. So please try to follow these guidelines, because this is one of the pillars of financial wellness, is preventing scams. This is my contact information, and now I think we can open up to questions. So I'm going to stop the share, and we will have questions now from the pre-submitted questions, as well as anything that has been brought up in the chat.
And so thank you. First of all, thank you, Marci, very much for giving us the presentation. We appreciate it. Now I wanted to introduce Barry Langer. Barry Langer is one of our volunteers at the Bill Payer program, and he's going to be asking questions. So again, I want to remind everybody, please put your questions in the chat. We do have questions that were submitted prior to the event that we will be going over, and Barry will be starting with those questions. And if you have any additional questions, we will be answering those. So thank you, Marci, and we look forward to the conversation.
So actually, before we start, I just saw a quick one that I think was just addressed to me about the password protection. Just to clarify, since I just brought it up in the presentation, a password protection interface is one login which stores all of your passwords in one place. I think when the internet first started, many of us were inclined to use one password for all of our logins. And now that we have, it could be hundreds of logins, that's ill-advised. You should be using different passwords for all these different logins if possible, because if you're hacked, if someone obtains that password, then they can log into all of your accounts. So a password protection device will store all of your passwords in one interface, excuse me, it's not a device, in one place. Keeper Security is one of them. I'm not going to advocate for one over the other, but if you want to Google it, you'll see a few different ones that are popular. And they also will suggest very strong passwords. So in the past, like you might have used like your address or your kids' names, whatever it is, now it's recommended to really use something that's less hackable, which is like a random string of letters and numbers and special symbols. And these password protection interfaces can recommend very strong passwords as well. Okay, Barry.
Alrighty. So Marci, the first question, would you recommend obtaining a power of attorney?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and that is very, very, very important. I would highly recommend that everyone in the United States of America obtains one. Now, every state's laws vary on powers of attorney. The forms are different, but what a power of attorney in general terms will do, and again, I'm not giving specific legal advice here, is if there's any issue with diminished capacity whereby you are not able to make decisions, and you will have control over who's making those decisions if in advance of any issues you sign a power of attorney. So in a broad way, I think it's very advised that everyone either consult an attorney in order to obtain it and go through all the legalities and the issues that are related to powers of attorney. But that is one legal document, as is a will, that I would highly recommend everyone obtain, because what happens is if you don't obtain certain of these legal documents where you're making these decisions, the law will make those decisions for you. In other words, if you don't have a will and you pass away, your assets will be determined, who obtains those assets will be determined by law, and that determination may be very different than what you would have wanted. Likewise, if you don't have a power of attorney, someone might be making these decisions who you have not chosen through a court proceeding or otherwise. So it just empowers you, while you're still able to make these decisions, to maintain control over your life and your finances. So yes, I would highly recommend that.
Okay, very good. Next question is, how much cash do you recommend for an emergency?
Okay, that's another good question. And financial experts vary on this. I've heard some different numbers. Typically, I think a ballpark amount would be approximately 6 months worth of funds that would be sufficient to cover your expenses. So if the world collapses, if there's a depression, if whatever, and for some reason your income your income stream is affected by that, that is the number in general terms of what many financial experts suggest having in liquid assets. And as we can see from this pandemic, I mean, a year ago, if anyone had said, it would be recommended that we were all like just kind of staying in our homes for this amount of time and having Zoom meetings instead of in-person meetings, I don't think anyone would have predicted the current state of the world. Likewise, the financial state of the world is difficult to predict. I mean, there are pandemics and acts of God and war, etc. So that's why, people might say, but I have Social Security, I have, whatever it is in income. To be on the conservative side from a financial planning perspective, it is advised to have this, this amount in a segregated liquid manner.
Very good. Yeah, this one's like a tough one to me anyway. What do you do if long-term care insurance premium, if your long-term care insurance it gets tripled
Okay, so this is one of the questions again we got in advance. There is a whole seminar that PSS is doing, PSS University, on long-term care insurance later this month. So I would highly recommend, if anyone is interested in long-term care insurance, any questions related to long-term care insurance, to definitely attend that meeting. The long-term care insurance industry has undergone significant upheavals and changes in the past years. It has become increasingly difficult and expensive to obtain long-term care insurance when it is even possible to obtain it. So in general terms, I think it's very important that if your long-term care premiums are significantly raised, you need to address this in a holistic way as part of your financial plan, and turn to a financial expert who can analyze the advisability of continuing with that long-term care insurance. And a good way to start that is to attend the meeting later this month, which will go into a lot of specifics about long-term care insurance. But again, this is a nationwide trend, and it's a difficult product for a lot of companies to offer. There are just demographic issues affecting these markets that are beyond anyone's control. So it's going to require a lot of thought and professional guidance with respect to what to do about that.
Very good. What are your recommendations for decreasing expenses?
Decreasing expenses. So this goes back to, I think it was the second pillar of this talk, and that's budgeting and keeping a spending diary. I think if we see, in a real way, in black and white, for example, I'm not sure how many of you, go to the local coffee place every morning and buy a cup of coffee. When you see in a spending diary how much that actually adds up to, I think in a lot of cases, you'll be making choices that will decrease those expenses. So I'm going to, use my own example. I rarely buy coffee. I make it in my home because I saw what those numbers were, and it was really astounding to me. And so one way is to use a spending diary where you can see in black and white where you're spending your money and really try to decrease expenses. That's really, critical. Again, particularly in New York, I think that eating out in restaurants and eating out in general, or buying prepared food, is one way that New Yorkers spend a lot of, money. And there's nothing wrong with supporting our local food institutions. I think that's really important too. But if you see how much you're doing and you go into it with a number that's allocated in a way that makes sense, great. Going out for lunch every day or buying prepared lunch every day, if you see that, if you haven't budgeted for it, I think that's a way to decrease your expenses.
I have a couple more if you have time.
Sure.
Marci, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm sitting here with my wife, who just told me that I spend too much money on coffee every month, and I'm gonna put your idea into practice and monitor how much I'm spending on a weekly basis and a monthly basis.
That's great. My talk, though, is not a marriage counseling or anything like that. So we could. I'm not giving that kind of advice as a couple, but I think it's great that you put it into effect and really see what you're spending money on.
So another one is, what is the first thing you should do if you're a victim of a scam?
So again, there's going to be a whole topic on this, and it's really complicated, and it really depends on your own, it depends on, which financial institutions you have accounts in, what type of scam you were subjected to. One simple thing that I think could apply across the board is, change all passwords. But, there's not one size fits all here, because it really depends on what the scam was and your personal financial situation. Number one, easy thing, change all your passwords immediately and use a keeper, use a password protection device. So going forward, all of those passwords are more secure.
Okay. Another question is the difference between just using an auto pay versus a bill pay service. Particularly if you're paying for a bill pay service, what's the difference?
Okay, so the difference is, for example, I mean, I can speak to what we're doing at SilverBills. We have a proprietary Ruby on Rails software application that not only it goes beyond autopay in a lot of ways. For example, we're storing all of the data. So each of our clients has a cloud-based storage, and they don't have to be, familiar with any of this kind of technology. It's just what we're doing in our back end. So in other words, all of that backup documentation is there. So all of the Con Ed bills, the actual images, all of the rent bills, all of the charitable contributions are stored, the images. So for example, for tax reasons, etc., that documentation is available. With AutoPay, in addition, we have a person who's checking all of the expenditures, at least monthly, if not more frequently. With AutoPay, it's set and forget, basically, right? There's not a person who's looking at those numbers. And AutoPay also can't account for certain expenses. So it's not as holistic as a bill pay service like SilverBills. So we can pay any kind of bill, including actually send out manual checks.
Okay, I think that's what's there in the chat that hasn't already been answered through chat.
Okay, let me see if I got anything specifically. Okay, I did not. So
we did get a lot of interest in this whole idea of passcode. Like if you can give ideas of, people are asking for specific like places to go to find out more information about that. That would seem to be a hot topic that people were asking about.
So
how it works and like how often it should, does it automatically do it? Like what's the ins and outs of it that you should be looking for?
So I guess I mean, it's no harm in letting you know what I use personally. It's called Keeper Security, Keeper, K-E-E-P-R. There's a free version as well as a paid version. If you go to that website, all of the information is there, but basically you just need to remember the one password for Keeper Security, and it stores all of your passwords in that one place. And it also will provide a suggested password, like for example, when you're originally onboarding onto your account and you're starting the process with whatever vendor it is or financial institution, Keeper will recommend a strong password. And even if you don't want to use what's recommended by Keeper and you put the password in that you're proposing to use, Keeper does an analysis of how safe that password is. In other words, like Hello Kitty or whatever, they would probably say that's not a good password. It can be hacked, people can guess it, or your name, etc., with your address. So they do a real-time analysis of your password and how strong it is. So I would recommend that you just go to that website and learn as much as you can, and just put into Google password protection, and some other suggestions will come up for other interfaces that you can use for that. You can also download apps to your phone that do it. There are a lot of different ways to protect your passwords that are a lot better than just writing them on a piece of paper and sticking them in your wallet or somewhere around your house.
There's a question of what, go ahead, David.
Looks like we're getting a bunch more questions. So we have time for like 2 or 3 more questions max, because we want to be cognizant of the hour. So go ahead, Barry.
Yeah. Do you have a particular percentage of an annual budget that you would recommend for setting aside for contingencies, unexpected large items?
So no, I don't. It's also a really personalized, well, when you say unanticipated or anticipated?
No, unanticipated, unexpected.
Okay, so unexpected, the typical recommendation sometimes from financial planners and experts is 6 months of expenditures. For unanticipated, I know that's a whole different question and really difficult to determine. So
well, they asked as a percentage, so I guess
percentage is not usually the way it's.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I think, to arrive at that, although there are online tools that maybe can provide guidance along percentage lines.
Okay. Not sure you can quite answer it. Well, like there's at least one person who's concerned that your password service is hackable. How safe is that lockbox, so to speak?
Keeper security.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good question because, you know, as we've all seen, because of the data breaches in major corporations and financial institutions, I don't think anyone can be ever safe of that. And I'm not advertising for Keeper security or any particular device. I think when the alternatives are explored, like, you know, writing it down on a piece of paper, etc. Personally, I'm willing to take the risk. And what my approach to this is, like, their whole business model is predicated on employing artificial intelligence and other really high-tech tools to prevent that from happening, particularly with password protection interfaces. I mean, that's, you know, that's their bread and butter. That's the whole, you know, the whole thrust of their business. So while, you know, there's no way of being 100% sure of any of this, I think it's better than the alternatives.
And this question was kind of asked before, or you kind of answered it before, but I think it's a theme, is really trusting your financial advisor. How do you know they are honest? And it's just
That's
a
a really
concern
good-
to people.
You know what? It's a really good question. And David is going to provide resources for vetting financial advisors. There are two basic, and I'm not a financial advisor, but there are two basic, in very broad strokes, types of financial advisors. There are fee-based, typically you pay by the hour or flat fee. And then there are commission-based, and those individuals get a commission for the you know, a percentage of trades, et cetera. And there's a lot of strong opinions about this topic, but there are regulatory agencies like FINRA, et cetera, that do license and require checking and background checking, et cetera. David will be providing resources for that. And it's a good question because, like, you know, with Bernie Madoff, you wonder how that could happen. But you know, I'm not really an expert in vetting financial advisors. There are a lot of online resources that can help you with that, though.
So two come just to mind that will be in your packet. FINRA actually has an app on their website that you can actually go to, put the name of the institution, and it will give you any kind of data that's come up, any complaints, and also there will be a link to the National Consumer Protection Bureau, which also keeps a database on companies. So that, like, you know, a lot of people go based on Better Business Bureau, but there's a lot of issues with that. So I would check that out as well. And there were a couple other questions that I wanted to kind of just mention. Somebody asked a question about what is SilverBill's flat fee for monthly bill paying? Did you want them to just like visit you on your site, or did you want to address that?
So I think if people can go to silverbills.com, there's a lot of information there, and then feel free to call the 800 number. That's how we can address that.
And the last one that I would say is, do you recommend paying all your bills and banking online? And if so, why?
So, you know, again, that's a very specific, individualized question. I would recommend, I was interviewed for a Consumer Reports article on this in the fall of 2019. So I would Google that. I think it's important to have some kind of online presence, because if you don't have anything online, you're actually you're more subject almost to hacking, because you don't know what's occurring in your, you know, online presence. But that in general is really a case-by-case basis, and I can't make like a global recommendation. So it's really individual.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Marci for taking her time to go through this with you all. I want to thank PSS, and I want to just make everybody aware that you will be getting an email tomorrow with lots of resources and with contact information. And if you look on your screen now, you should be seeing our next chat, which is, I'm very excited to say, it's Gary Brown from the Attorney General's office, and all of your questions about scams, schemes, best practices, which agency or which organization to take your question to will be answered by him. For those of you that don't know, he does a monthly radio show in Westchester, He's fantastic, and we're looking forward to it. And there will be, on December 1st, we will have the Commissioner for the Department of Consumer Affairs and Worker Protection, Lorelei Salas, here herself to talk about all the work in New York City that the Department of Consumer Affairs does, including financial counseling, worker protection. And then we have a specialist on December 3rd from Department for the Aging to talk about older adults and getting a job during the pandemic. So, and we have many more after that. So please think about us, sign up early, and we look forward to seeing you all again, and thanks so much.